everything off, again, welcome to shOPS Talk, our bi-weekly episode that we partner with from the WizOps side with Salesforce and Sonar to bring you operations talk from some of the best folks in the game. It'd be an understatement if I said that that's not who we have today. Pete joining us. So he's excited. He knows he's one of the best out there. So before we kick off, again, I want to thank everybody for joining, especially for joining from our Wizard of Ops community. We're excited to be hosting these. And again, we wouldn't be able to do it with our great partners over at Salesforce. So thank you to Jen and her team for all the hard work and getting this produced. Pete, man, I'm excited. I'm going to pass it over to you, let you introduce yourself, and we'll kick things off.
Sure. What's up, sales nerds? How's it going? We're going to sales nerd it up. My name is Pete Kazanjy. I'm one of the founders of Atrium, makers of sales performance analysis software, super whizzy sales performance analysis software. I'm also the founder of Modern Sales, which I bet a bunch of, which is kind of like maybe it's like the watered down sales nerd pool versus like the high intensity sales nerd jacuzzi. Maybe it's like Modern Sales is like the pool, and then there's like the jacuzzi where like the real nerds like hang out. They like pop it, which is obviously WizOps. So I got into sales and sales excellence from my experience at my prior software company, TalentBin. TalentBin was a recruiting software product and company that my co-founder and I founded in 2010. Holy mackerel, it's a long time ago. And that's where I went from being like a business generalist founder. My background is actually in product marketing and product management from like way back in the day at VMware. So I went from being a business generalist founder to our first AE, first sales manager, first sales leader, first like sales operations, person, hacker as well. And that's where I really started to understand the importance of process excellence, analytically driven, modern sales, as I like to call it. And so that company was eventually acquired by Monster Worldwide in 2014. I eventually wrote a book on startup sales called Founding Sales, because essentially it was the book that I wish I had. Oh,
Small
there
plug.
it is. There's
plug.
your surprise. Yeah. Well, I mean, like my problem was at the time is like I was a product marketer, product manager. I didn't know crap about sales, right? And so like at the time I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like what's the book I sure is like predictable revenue is up. It's not about like, hey, I don't even know how to do disco, right? Like I don't even know how to run a demo. Like I don't even know how to run pipe management. So like that's what founding sales is all about. But yeah, but at this point, probably now for like 8 years or so, it's been all sales excellence all the time, but obviously with a heavy smattering of operational kind of geekery, which is how I know Brad and a lot of the folks at in WizOps. So I'm super pumped to be here to kind of talk about project overload, because I actually have a background as a product manager and a product marketer. And one of the things I always like to talk about is like sales operations is like the product manager of the sales org. And so that means like, what are we going to do and what are we going to say no to, right? How are we going to prioritize? And so, versus like the account executives and sales managers, like, here's my thing that's most important. You should do it immediately, right? So like, that's a super tough topic, and I'm glad we're going to be talking about it today.
We are. I'd be remiss if I didn't say that a lot of what I've learned over the years, I've learned directly from this book. And I don't say this lightly. There are times that I'm texting Pete early in the morning, late at night, and I'm having a question. He's like, Brad, come on, man. It's chapter 3, Founding Sales. Look it up. It's like, that's right.
Hyperlink.
So,
well, that's why it's
Hyperlink.
Online at Founding Sales. It was actually, so it started out as a Google Doc with like all the different chapters and like anchor links in the Google Docs, in part because you get the same questions again and again. And that way, if you can just slang somebody a hyperlink rather than be like, hey, could I pick your brain over coffee? You're like, no, you could read this chapter on sales hiring instead.
Yep. Too easy. And I have to say, we wouldn't be where we are from a WizOps community without getting to ask Pete and Rich and everybody else at MSP questions about how to run a successful community. I think one of the coolest things, and we got a good shout out from Jonathan Morgan, who's on with us right now, earlier today, about how communities help so much in progression of careers, but also troubleshooting, figuring out how to do some of these weird, nerdy things that we do. If we didn't have these folks so quickly within arm's reach, whether it be with Slack or email, whatever it is, we wouldn't be able to answer the questions we have. So, but all that being said, let's jump into it. Project management. I think you already said this a little bit on your background with the product management side. And look, at the end of the day, we're all scrappy. We've got a list too long of things to do.
Right.
Let's start high and then we'll dive in deep. What do you think about
Yeah.
just overall prioritizing? Where do you start? How do you start to look at some of these projects that are endless on your plate with Atrium and MSP? How do you even start to factor these in and prioritize them?
Yeah, I think the way that I would think about that. So I'm going to drop in the chat here really quickly. This sales operational excellence maturity model here, and I think the important thing, it's just like product management, right? Like, what's the thing that's in the critical path right now? Like, what is the thing that like is blocking us from going forward? I'm a huge fan of the book. Brad's gonna laugh at this. The goal, right? So like the goal and like the metaphor in this book called The Goal, like these Boy Scouts walking along, and there's like, you know, all the Boy Scouts are getting kind of like slammed up behind the kind of like portly Boy Scout Herbie who's carrying too much. You always got to figure out like what's your critical path, what's the thing that's really blocking you right now, and just be honest about that, right? So like, especially when you're early stage, yeah, we could do a bajillion different things. And of course, you got all these sales reps that are showing up and they're like, oh my gosh, wouldn't it be great for us to do some video prospecting right now? It's like, yeah, that would be really cool. Except for the fact that we don't have like auto naming conventions on our opportunity on our ops on creation. So why don't we like pump the brakes on that and like get our initial things dialed in? And so I think that the important thing is like, what's the thing that's like we gotta have right now, and then being just mindful of how many actual resources that we have to bring to bear. So like, let's use Sonar as an example because I love to bash on them. Obviously, Brad and Jack are, you know, sales operationally, you know, pretty excellent. Jack to a lesser extent, although he has better hair than Brad. But
Or
like,
not.
you know, yeah. So you can't, you know, so you guys had a certain amount of resources, but now I think Mitch came over, right?
Yep.
Mitch from Full Story. And so now you have like more bullets, right? And so you can expand. So it's essentially like, what are the things we got to do? What are the ones that are above the fold versus below the fold? Let's just be honest about it. And then how many bullets do we have to spend against that? And just be honest about that. And then just like, I'm a big fan of running sales operations in like an agile fashion. It's like, hey, here are the thing, like, here's our list, but as Brad said, it's never going to end. So like, what are the ones that are like most important? Cool. Those are the ones that we're going to do across like the next eight weeks, let's say, and let's just do sprints against that. And like, maybe let's have a halfway point and say like, hey, are the things that we said are the most important for the next 4 weeks? Are they still the most important to the business shift? Right. So like, there's a lot of stuff that you can learn from product management and agile in doing operations prioritization.
Well, I think that's one of the coolest things about that. And I think with where we're seeing this shift, and you see it every day because you're talking to a lot of the same folks we're talking to, it's not exactly sales ops anymore. We're all evolving in some form or fashion. There's a whole debate about rev ops, sure. But the reality is you, me, the folks that are mostly on this call as participants, we're supporting multiple groups. One of the hardest things as I pound my hands on the desk is making sure that alignment and that visibility is there for the other person.
Sure.
And a good example of it, if you are a rev ops manager and you report into your VP of sales, but you're working on that project for the VP of customer success, how are they triangulating? How are they talking to each other? Do they know the priority list? Because exposure is one of the biggest things, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the way, so Christine Maxey, I think that might be her maiden name. I can't remember if that's still her last name. So she was at Lean Data, right? She did RevOps there. And so actually at OpsStars, she was on this panel that I ran, and she had this really great thing where she's just like, yeah, man, like Trello board.
Yep.
Right. Like, I mean, this is how we do it. So I'm my engineering teams and my my co-founders are product lead. I'm like their worst nightmare because I'll email them like six things a day. Be like, hey, this is broken. Hey, this, hey, this, hey, this. And of course, where that goes, it all goes into Jira. Right. And of course, they're like, hey, could you put that in Jira? And I'm like, I have to go to a call right now. I'm good at email. Right.
Yep.
But the point is that like, get that into a system where everybody can have visualization on it. Like some organizations use cases. Use Service Cloud cases or whatever. Whatever it is, like get it in there, get it modeled, right? It's just like ops, right? Like, oh, it's not real if it's not an op. Get it modeled, get it in there, and then just have visibility of that to everybody else, and then have an operating rhythm where it's like, cool, here's Monday, this is what we're gonna work on. We're still working on these things in the batch, and then okay, it's at the end of 8 weeks. What did we actually complete? Okay, let's get the stakeholders in a room and let's do some horse trading on this and see like what's most important. And that's the thing we're going to work on in the next 8 weeks. But like get it modeled, so, and then get it into an operating rhythm.
Yep, it is. It's so important. And it's funny. I remember having this conversation with you 3 or 4 years ago when I started at Terminus, looking for advice, looking for guidance. It's like, how do I help mobilize that? It's the same answer, and it's still the same pertinent answer, and it's still relevant today, because if you're not creating some sort of visibility, Trello boards, Asana, Jira, you name it, and people aren't knowing what you're prioritizing, then it's almost impossible for you to truly deliver to all those folks, because somebody's going to feel like they're getting cut short or they're not getting their turn of your time, right?
Yeah, or you're not working on it, right?
Yeah.
Right,
Yep.
like, or you're not actually burning the calorie. Oh, Brad, he's doing Peloton classes in the middle of the day again. Brad's like, well, I always do one. He's doing 3 Peloton classes a day as opposed to just his one. No, I'm not. Look at this. Look at all the tickets. Look at all the tickets we're resolving in Asana. Look at all the tickets we're resolving in Trello. Like, come on, man.
Yep. And if I'm anything like Keith Jones, I get to do that while I'm on the Peloton, because he's got the nifty little like keyboard thing that he's doing it while he's riding. So I told you we have a little.
That keyboard has to be
guest.
so gross. Like the amount of sweat that's on it. Oh God.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I was about to say. So we have a special guest. Not only that, if he doesn't turn his camera on, that's fine, because I've got my Dan Grossberg big head right now. So I can at least be Dan if I need to. But Dan was pinging me earlier. He knew that you were jumping on. First off, wanted to say hello. Also, rock some sales Nord gear. Dan,
where's my hat?
How do I find it, man? Get your hat. Come on.
Oh, it's downstairs.
I know. Dan, what's good, man? Happy Thursday.
Oh, you're muted, baby.
Hey,
there
how we doing today, guys?
Fantastic. Look at the branding on point.
Mine's better. Mine's better.
No, it's not. Mine's better.
Oh!
Mine's better.
Oh my God, you geeks.
Dude, we are. So, interesting story behind Dan. This is the way I'm going to tee this up. I've known Dan a little over a year now, but I've also known him in 3 different roles with 3 different companies, and all of them are different in different capacities. Dan, I know that you've got project management skills out the wazoo because you're a badass and you know what you're doing. But even in one of those 3 or 2 of those 3 or all 3, what are some of the things that you're looking at on the project management side, keeping your priorities straight? I know you've got a list extremely long because we catch up often about it, but thoughts on project management and keeping these things moving and the wheel spinning?
Yeah, I think one of the more important principles that I've adopted, especially recently, is the idea around alignment versus agreement. So like oftentimes there's a lot of projects that are in the queue that need to get done.
Sure.
And some decisions that need to get made. And not everybody's going to agree, but like, as long as you get the principles out there that, yes, I will commit to doing this, I will do it effectively, but I do not agree with it. I think that's more important to have that sort of alignment. And I, like I said, it's something I started putting in very recently, and I think it's been working out well in order to keep, like you said, the pipeline moving, get the projects churned out there, and continue moving on.
Yeah, and good to document that too. So so our head of customer success is a woman named Karen Rohrer. She used to work at Bain back in the day, and so Bain has this thing, the responsibility assignment matrix, that I just chatted into the panel, the chat there for folks. But yeah, just like knowing, be like, yeah, look, like you're not the responsible person. Like you're consulted. Like you're not, what is the George W? Like you're not the decider, right? Like, and then once a decision has been made, let's document that, because there's nothing worse than like 6 months later, someone showing up and being like, see, I told you about XYZ. And it's like, no. See, here in this Jira ticket, or like here in this Trello ticket, we said that we were going to go with this decision right here because of this. We disagreed and we committed, and this is why we went after it. So like, making sure to document that as well is super helpful.
Absolutely. I think one of the coolest things, and Dan, you're spot on. You brought this up, and I'm going to give you a hat tip, and then I might boot you as a panelist, or you can hang out with us the whole time. Doesn't matter. But you talk about prioritizing and having some of those tough conversations of, I've got to do this, I can't do that. It reminded me, and I'll drop this in the chat as well, one of the best podcasts I've listened to. Everybody listens to Tim Ferriss to a certain degree, but he does a reading of how to say no gracefully. And I think it so much aligns to how to put that in the chat, how to actually like articulate this. Because in project management, we have how many hours in the day? About 60 hours in a day. And we're asked to do 80 hours worth of work. And yes, that's a fun days, not week, but we're asked to do a ton of work. We don't have all the time to do it. And I think one of those hard conversations you have to do is say, I know that's a priority for you. Here's the other 12 things on my priority list, and here's where it fits in. We can have a conversation if you agree on that or not, but here's where I'm prioritizing it. And it's not just saying, nope, can't do that project. Sorry, gotta go. It's here's what else I have on my plate. It's being transparent. It's being open to everybody else. And most of the time, 9 times out of 10, hopefully, you're going to say that to that person. They're going to be empathetic to you, and they're going to say, you know what, you're right. I think you're spot on with it, and there's no chance that you can get to that right now. I totally get it. I'm going to give you another couple weeks. And again, transparency and level setting.
Yep, for sure.
Love it. Before we get into a couple of rapid fire questions, the one thing that I did, if I can find my doc correctly, that I want to point out, we did have a couple of questions come through, and Dan, you're a tech expert on this, so you can jump in on these questions too. Andre Washington sent a question in earlier, said, what systems and tools do you think are the best for managing ops projects? And we have all project management systems, but ops specific with what we're doing. What are y'all finding successful?
Dan, you're in it right now. What do you guys use?
Yeah, so
he's like Slack. People Slack me, and I write it on Post-it notes.
No, what I was gonna say is that like I think the technology or the tool is less important, and like the system that you use is like super important. So to answer the question,
Sure.
what we're using now is Notion, which I mean,
Sure.
it works for us, right? But in prior roles, we used Asana, we even used Jira, and even roles prior to that, we used Salesforce. Like we built out the cases and custom objects to manage the workload that way. But yeah, I mean, Notion's okay. It's working for us. And
Actually,
like
to Dan's point about like, it's like a way underappreciated tool for doing a good job at this, the calendar.
Don't sleep on the calendar.
No, totally, right? Because like I just did this this session on setting and managing by goals, and it's like an operating rhythm, right? Like so obviously Atrium makes performance analysis software that managers use to do data-driven team management, and so much of the time people say like, oh well, like I created a bunch of dashboards. We won, right? Like we're done. It's like, no, dude, you have to look at those on a recurring day. On Mondays, you have to look at this dashboard to see if anyone did any work last week. On Thursday, you have to look at this one in order to And I think it's like, and so having that operating rhythm is really important. Same with ops, right? Like you could have Notion, you could have a Google Doc, you could have like a whiteboard, probably not nowadays. You could have what's Keith? You could have a mural, shared mural. A shared mural, right? You have a shared mural, you like move stuff around, but like making sure that like, did we look at it on Monday? Did we look at it on the next Monday? Did we have like the 4-week one where we went through? Like I think, yeah, the underappreciated use of like calendar is probably something not to forget about.
I can't, the name is escaping me now. I'm sorry, because I'm sure they're probably on this call, but I was talking about project management with somebody else, and it was the best line. Gantt charts are the most deceiving thing in the world because projects don't end. And it's to that same point. We're constantly evolving. We're constantly changing things. Like, sure, we can say, we're going to do this little segment. We're going to I used to do consulting. So Gantt charts we live by, right? Because we need to see if we're on track to things, where our finishes were. And all the time, it's like, cool, we get done with post go live and, we support for 2 weeks and we wrap up. Like, no, that's not the case at all. Like projects never finish. You're constantly iterating. You're constantly changing, keeping your eye on the ball. You don't roll out a system one day and then let it go. You're always using it and changing.
It's like product, right? Because like what you do is like the project is done when you've gotten to the outcome. Like Jack and I were talking about this the other day because he's like a huge. What's the book that he's like all high on right now? Inspired by Marty Kagan. It's like product management. Like the project is done when the user when the user can do the thing that they're supposed to be able to do to the level of to a high NPS level of satisfaction. Maybe it doesn't have to be like 80 NPS, but like certainly it can't be like 0, right? Or high utilization. And so it's like, like the project is done when you've reached the desired utility outcome, as opposed to like, did we check off all the requirements? It's like, no, are the oh, congratulations, the reps still aren't filling out close date, even though you did all those like, workflow rules.
Yep, you're spot
Project's
on.
probably not done.
Dan? No, you're good. All right, Dan, appreciate you jumping in, man. I know, no doubt I'm going to be talking to you later this week, next week. We talk almost every week. So appreciate you jumping in, buddy. Have a great afternoon.
Bye, everyone.
Good to see you, Dan.
Dan, or Pete, so we got about 5 minutes left. We can probably go quicker than next. If anybody has any questions, we'd love to see them in the chat here, or jump into WizOps. Don't toss them into the shOPS Talk channel. But we'll go through some of the same fun questions we ask everybody that jumps in here with us. Most aren't related to operations. So here we are. What are you watching on Netflix right now? What's your favorite TV show?
We're watching a lot of Disney Plus with my 3-year-old.
What's the junior
And
SMB rep doing right now?
the junior SMB rep is at school right now, but we're just like working our way through like the Disney backlog. Somehow we found like a bunch of Mickey Mouse stuff, but like he's pretty digging on the Mandalorian right now a little bit. He likes baby Yoda, and he calls the Mandalorian the Knight. It's like the Knight.
Okay, nice. I'm gonna go on a limb here. Brian Skipper jumps in. It's like Bluey, so I think that's what they're watching in the Skipper household. So maybe a good suggestion there.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, hardest question you're gonna have to answer today. Favorite Dorito color or flavor, for that matter? Red, blue, purple. What do you got?
Oh, well, I thought in the question it was like orange versus blue, and I was like, well, it's got to be orange. Like not, but now that you're saying we can do like the new school Dorito flavors, I think it is red, the spicy ones. Those are my favorite.
Ooh,
oh yeah, well,
solid.
Oh yeah.
I love it. All right, 2 more. This is the biggest internal debate that we have in the Sonar office. So, how do you prefer your leftover pizza?
I'm like a scrappy MVP kind of guy, so I'll just like eat it cold. But my wife yells at me because she's a designer, and so she wants it done correctly. And so she's the type of person who will do it in the oven, so it is like properly crisp, and like I'm just eating it cold.
Yeah, that's fair. Or the opposite in the Smith house. My wife would have it cold 10 times out of 10, and I'm like, God, oven. Even Jack is talking about like putting it on top of the oven, like in a pan, a little bit of water and the top on it. He's a product guy, right? Of course he's gonna overproduce.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right. So here's the finale, and then again, if anybody has questions, please pop them into WizOps, pop them into the panelist part. But if you were to go back in time and tell early Pete some advice on how to be a great operations professional, what advice would you give yourself?
Ooh, early Pete, how to be a great operations professional. Probably it's like join WizOps and join Modern Sales, and like learn from your peers. I mean, my answer to all these, like anytime somebody asks a question about like what's the most important skill or what would you tell yourself? Like to quote my friend Brian Murray, like I'm an infovore. Right. And so the way that I like use founding sales as an example, like there's not a lot of stuff in founding sales that is new. It's just an aggregation of me like distilling a bunch of stuff that I learned from sales leaders and whatever, and like translating it into like founder speak or non-seller speak. So like that can be a really great way of accelerating professional development and solving problems quickly. It's just like most problems have already been solved, right? So if you can just like grab that information from somebody over on WizOps or somebody in MSP or what have you, or there's a book on it. Like I'm looking forward to Brad's book on early stage sales operations because it doesn't really exist. Like obviously Matt Bertuzzi's book on lightning sales operations is great, but it's more like very tactically focused on like setting up lightning for SDRs and what have you versus. And so I think the important thing is just like, look for shortcuts to learn from other people and accelerate your learning curve. Cause like, versus like slamming your head against the wall. And I guess like, this is kind of like the Salesforce Trailblazer community, et cetera, are so useful for those things. So just like make use of those resources as much as possible.
Absolutely. I always boil it down to just ask questions. Ask as many questions as you can. Pete probably gets tired of me texting him all the time with a question I have, but I know he's
going with a hyperlink. Just respond with a hyperlink. Here it is in founding sales. Here's the thread on MSP.
I love it. All right, one last question. We're going to try to squeeze it in, all right?
Yes.
What type of roles, when you're adding to your team, especially think about the ops folks, are you adding folks by specialization or by departmental focus? when you think about growing your teams, how are you prioritizing the person and the skill set?
Ooh, well, at this point, I mean, we're so small. We're only like a 20-something person organization. So if we added an operations person, we would want somebody who is like a, Jack or Jill of all trades. I think also the way to think about it is like, what are the complementary skill sets? Like, what's the missing skills that you don't have right now? So like, use up my organization as an example. Like Karen, our head of customer success, she used to run sales ops at Double Dutch, and then for a part of LinkedIn. And so like, her Salesforce chops, and actually all of our CSMs are former sales operations as well. And so like their Salesforce administration chops are like super gnarly. Whereas like my marketing operations chops, having adopted HubSpot over the last year, are like, okay, right? So like when we get a revenue operations person in here, I can't believe we just call it revenue operations. When we get a revenue operations person in here, probably we'll look for somebody who has more of a marketing ops spike, right? And then like from a CS ops standpoint, I've done a ton of work on getting like census data flowing into sales, like flowing into Salesforce, whatever. But I know that I'm weak on marketing ops, right? Like I know when I go to implement lean data, there's gonna be a huge learning curve there, and I'm sure I'm using campaigns wrong and all that sort of jazz. So I think what you should do is like look for that complementary skill set that's missing, and like prioritize for that.
I love it. Too good. Great question to go out on. And honestly, it kind of wraps it all back into the project management piece that we're talking about too. Find what you're trying to solve for. Don't let scope creep jump in. Don't try to do too many projects at once. Stay focused on what you're doing. Same principles can be applied to hiring. So, Pete, too good. I know we're at the top of time, man. We nailed this perfect. I'm going to drop the link to your book, Founding Sales, along with a bunch of other links that you send me into WizOps. But can't thank you enough for joining, man. Got a great time. And for everybody on the call, thank you all for joining. Obviously, the holidays are right around the corner. So instead of 2 weeks from now, we're actually going to go 3. But we're excited about having it. And Pete, thank you again, man. As always, had a good time.
Yep. Good to see you. Say hi to Jack.
I will. See you guys. Be good.
Bye.